Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our Paws On Netflix podcast.
Today we're covering the second season of the Netflix series Raising Dion.
Yes, now this season takes place 2 years after the original season.
Right.
And Dion's learning to control his powers with his new team, but a new hidden enemy causes him to have to save the world yet again.
Yes, and before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification button for future podcasts and World of Paws videos.
Yes, and be sure to follow us under Paws On Animation at Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest.
Right.
And feel free to share. We really appreciate it.
Yes. So for here, we didn't think the show was actually coming back because it was over a year since we had heard anything, and we thought maybe they took it off because this came out right before the event happened. Mm-hmm. So of course there was no chance they were going to film, and you can tell when it's written when you watch it because it feels like events should have happened right after season 1. Mm-hmm. Because it was a 2-year gap. It feels like, why are they still like this after so long?
Right. And of course Dion and his friends have gotten older.
Right.
And including Brayden is older as well.
Right.
And the adult actors, some of them look different. Some have lost weight. Some have changed their styles. There's just changes that are evident. So
right.
Because of that, they had to go ahead and say it's a 2-year time jump.
Right. And then have to explain some of the things that were in there. Like, well, they had to explain why they were older because they just said 2 years. But they explained, like, okay, they lost their job. They got promoted to this. I'm going through things. They even had to try to explain why. Well, the cliffhanger showed that Brayden was coming after Dion immediately. Mm-hmm. But because of the forced shutdown, they had to say, like, he had to find his bearings or get used to the crooked man before he went after him. So they had to come up with explanations for why didn't this stuff happen immediately after.
And this season begins with Pat returning, who, if you've seen season 1, you know is the crooked man. If you haven't, sorry. And now he's powerless in saying that he's come to warn them and to help.
Right. And one thing to point out about the characters is, besides the gap, is that they act very differently. And Mama had pointed out multiple times we've been watching that they think they have like changed writers, maybe whoever's the head writer or the co-writer, because there's a different feel in it. The first one felt like a superhero show.
Yes.
There was sort of an innocence to it and a theme of family,
and which really had us looking forward to season 2 and is one of our highest viewed superhero podcasts.
Right. However, when we got to season 2, that feeling was no longer there. And not just because of the 2-year gap. The writing felt a bit darker, which we knew was going to be anyway. It felt, to us, it felt a little colder. Like, there wasn't as much as a fun time with the show like you were having the first time. Like, oh, he's a superhero. This is like a kid's dream come true. Now, the second season, they're going through this thing like this is a burden, and you don't know who to trust, and whoever's writing it doesn't seem to be familiar with how people view superheroes suddenly.
Now, when we checked it on Wikipedia, it appears to be anywhere from 8 to 12 people involved in the writing this time, which makes it for a really muddled script.
Yes, because there were themes all over the place, subplots one after the other. There were like at one point almost 10 of them going on at once, one for each writer, and they tried to like recapture the feeling like when you really love superheroes and comics and things. There's even a scene where they eat their junk food snacks, read comics, talk about movies and stuff, which in hindsight sounds like, hey, you really want to do that like how people do, but when you watch it, it feels like the person who wrote that scene or directed didn't know how it felt. So when you watch it, it felt like they were just trying to force in a scene for the people who were fellow comic book nerds and movie lovers, because all they did was put out some comics, put out some food, and spat out some references to movies that you already know very well enough that you reference too much in other films. So it felt like they were trying to force in the superhero part for the people who love superheroes.
Another thing that was really different about this season is last season there was a lot more action. Mm-hmm. In terms of seeing Dion not only use his powers, but having other things that came up. For example, the other people who had the powers the same as him. They didn't mention any of those people this season.
No.
Like, all of them have disappeared off the face of the earth.
Right.
Who we did see is 2 people who are older than Dion but still younger, mm-hmm. that are training at the facility. It's not Sophia.
Looks like it's Buena, like the restaurant.
Thank you. Yeah. They're training at the facility, so he meets them. But all those other people that we learned about all across the world, and the ones that had experienced the Aurora Borealis at the same time and gotten the powers, none of them were mentioned again. It's like they don't exist.
Yeah.
And if something happened to them, they didn't explain that to us. And now it's just Dion and these few people or kids that are in this facility, which was really, really weird.
Right.
Because that's what made part of season 1 really interesting, seeing there's other people with these powers, and that it took place way across the world, and somehow Dion ended up getting them,
right,
like his dad did,
right,
and like Pat did,
right.
But all of that has just been thrown out, tossed out,
right,
trashed, and it's like it's a whole different thing that you're not even familiar with.
Right. And the two that they introduced were fine for the most part, but eventually it felt like they were really trying to get you to like these characters instantly. Like there's a new love interest for Dion's mother, who they just immediately they don't even beat around the bush. They immediately just make it obvious the second he's on screen, she's gonna fall for him. So they didn't have to bother writing any build-up, any chemistry or nothing. Like, okay, they're gonna be together. Let's just see how long it takes for it to happen. And it felt like it wasn't even deserved when it gets to the end. It's just like, okay, you're just trying to force her with somebody for no reason.
And I think that's a good point you bring up. This whole season seemed rushed.
Mm-hmm.
Last time when we saw this cast and we saw this show, everything seemed to go at a nice pace.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem like things are being forced to happen or made to happen. We know the event has affected things in many ways,
mm-hmm,
but it shouldn't have affected the show, because you still could have had the same pacing. It's been 2 years. There's no reason that it had to be rushed.
Right.
Regardless of when it came back, fans of this show like us, we're going to watch it. We were just waiting for it to come back, and we were patient. And whenever it came back, we were excited, and the pacing, having been slower, would have been a whole lot better for the season.
Right. And the other character they brought in was about, I think, a teenage girl who they kind of had just come in and out of the show until she instantly becomes the main character towards the end, when they're trying to come up with a cure for a plant virus that they put in. And yes, they did write that in there. And Pat couldn't figure out how to get the cure.
Well, he was trying to separate the components, and he couldn't.
Right. And then the girl has big issues trying to control the powers. So then when that problem comes up, immediately she instantly has control of her power. She instantly solves the problem for them. She's instantly the hero, and then she instantly is the main character. Well, another main character within the show, and it's shown to have such a background in science and everything. It felt like, well, why didn't you show us these things when she first appeared slowly in each one, and then have it come full circle at the end instead of just like instant main character as soon as she did it?
And basically, they just made her Miss Marvel. She has the same type of cosmic powers. She transports or travels, I should say, like her. She's got the energy coming out of her hands. She's capable of doing all the things that Miss Marvel, I'm sorry, forgive me, not Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel, for you guys. She's just Captain Marvel. And all the powers you see Captain Marvel with in her movies is exactly what this girl does.
Right. And like I said, they introduced quite a few characters in here, and of course Dion's friends are back. They even throw in this extra subplot where the school's having a play. And the entire subplot you think is for Dion and the friends, but it goes to Esperanza trying to come out of her shell, which she didn't know she needed to do because she kind of did already in the first season.
And she was always really confident in the first season, so it was really strange seeing her not confident.
Right. And it looks like half the time they wanted to do this, they just wanted to make a bunch of references to other theatrical productions like Hamilton or Dear Evan Hansen or Wicked. And it's like, you could have done this in an easier way. Why was this such a big thing for you to put into the show? It didn't really even help the story. It just seemed like they needed to put something in. And then lastly, you have, of course, Brayden coming in, who, like, we understand, like you said, got older. They had to come up with an excuse for him to not go after Dion immediately, or maybe he had to find him, which would make sense and fit. But then they sort of do this thing where you're not sure if he's really the bad guy or the crooked man's controlling him, because they play it out as if, okay, Crooked Man is controlling him, but then he wants to do things of his own volition. But then it's the Crooked Man again, and then when they pad out, they don't trust Pat because the things he did when he had the powers. But they want to help the kid reform. If he's the bad guy, they want to help him because he's scared. But they never do the same thing to Pat. He got the power away for 2 years and was fine, and he just wanted to show, he can be better, he can do better, he wanted another chance. Not only was he never given that, but Brayden was given that, and it was the exact same circumstances doing the exact same thing as Pat.
And they kept stating within the movie, so you understand, it was kind of like watching She-Ra and the Princess of Power on Netflix. They kept saying, you don't deserve it because you killed a bunch of people and you killed her husband.
Right.
And that's what they kept stating over and over, no matter what he did, he didn't deserve it. It was like watching a DC animated movie.
It's funny you say that.
Because you've had Penguin and others in different DC standalone movies, animated, try to reform, and then no one believes they can do it.
Right.
And no matter what they do, they say they're villains. So they say, you know what, since you think this is what I am, this is what I'm going to be.
Right. And it's funny you say that because, like I said, you did that. Brayden did the exact same thing for 2 years, but he gets the second chance that Pat never does. He just goes back to being evil, and you're like, oh, I knew we shouldn't have trusted him. It's like, you could trust him. You refused to, but they act like it's justified, like they were right about him all along. So it's funny you brought it up that it's like a DC movie because I felt like we're watching a CW show, and CW has a lot of the DC superhero shows on there that aren't good now. And you've had that feeling the last half of the season. Like the first half it was okay. Second half, the lighting was different, the tone was different. It was unfortunately almost depressing to watch. Like you just wanted to get through it. It didn't feel like a superhero show, it didn't feel like a family show, it didn't feel like a kid's show. It just felt like this was a CW show they put on Netflix, and it was just every bad thing they could think of that happened to the characters, except getting killed off, happened.
Which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, and it was really odd watching because it was so fun in season 1. Second season was either meh, weird, or just not fun. It was just almost depressing, which is so weird to have this theme when the show was so fantastic the first season.
Right, and with the cliffhanger, unless it's canceled, there's going to be a season 3. Maybe they will improve season 3, not having to have a 2-year break. And the best thing I think they can do for this show is not have 8 to 12 writers.
Yeah.
Keep Michael B. Jordan, because I do think he made season 1. He was part of the reason it really, really was good.
Right.
He's into anime and comics, and he seemed to have lent his experience and his knowledge, and him actually appearing in it made it better.
Right.
It really did, because you didn't think you were going to get to meet the dad. You did. We thought at some point he was going to come back now, but it looks like either, when it was due to scheduling or just the way they wrote it.
Right.
He's not appearing back to him again. But in season 1, they gave you the impression that he would be in the season.
Right.
So that was very disappointing thing as well.
Right.
So if you've seen Raising Dion season 2, let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you haven't, both seasons are available to watch exclusively on Netflix. We definitely recommend watching season 1 first. Don't just go to 2 and then go back to 1, because season 1 is amazing. Season 2, not as much, but we are committed to sticking with this show.
Right.
Also, keep in mind, this is one of the shows on Netflix that has an almost entirely black cast, and they're excellent actors, and they're positive role models. They also have Dipper, if you watch Gravity Falls.
Right.
And Dipper plays
Pat.
So he's another good reason to watch. And you've got some other actors you're really not as familiar with, but we can say everyone in here does a fantastic job at acting.
Right.
It's the writing that seems to be the problem.
Right.
So give it a chance.
And if you haven't already, subscribe for updates and weekly videos on your favorite anime series, animated shows, and all things animation.
Absolutely.
So, thank you so much for watching Rascal Entertainment.
And I'm Mom Entertainment.
Have a toontastic day.
Peace.